6 years of silence, 6 years of being invisible, one sentence in Sicilian, and everything shattered. When Kaya Bellini answered the most dangerous man in New York in his own forgotten dialect, she signed her death warrant, or her rebirth. Dominic Varelli doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. And he never lets anyone see beneath his mask. But the waitress who saved his life wasn't just anyone. She was a ghost from the past his empire tried to bury. This is a story of blood, betrayal, and two people who should have destroyed each other, but chose something far more dangerous instead. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The rain fell like bullets on the streets of Manhattan, turning the sidewalks into rivers of neon and shadow. Inside Rossini's, the Italian restaurant tucked into a forgotten corner of Little Italy, the world moved in muted tones, clinking glasses, hushed conversations, the scrape of forks against porcelain. It was the kind of place where questions weren't asked and faces were quickly forgotten. Kaya Bellini preferred it that way. She moved between the tables like smoke, her dark hair pulled back tight, her uniform crisp and unremarkable. Invisible. That was the goal. That had always been the goal. For 6 years, she had perfected the art of being no one. No past, no future, no footprint. Just another waitress in a city that swallowed people whole and never spit them out. Table 7 needs water, Marco grunted from behind the bar, his thick Brooklyn accent cutting through the low hum of the restaurant. Kaya nodded without a word, filled a pitcher, and glided toward the corner booth. She didn't look up. She never looked up. Eye contact invited questions. Questions invited danger. But tonight, danger walked through the door anyway. The restaurant went quiet. Not silent, but muted, like someone had turned down the volume on the world. Kaya felt it before she saw it. The shift in the air, the way conversation stumbled, the subtle straightening of spines. She knew what it meant. Power. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. She kept her eyes down as she poured water into glasses, her hands steady, her breathing controlled. She'd learned long ago that survival meant being beneath notice, especially when predators entered the room. Signorina. The voice was cold, smooth, and sharp as a blade. It cut through the quiet like a command, not a request. Kaya's hand paused for half a second, imperceptible to anyone else, a lifetime to her. She finished pouring, set down the pitcher, and turned. Dominic Varelli sat in the center booth, his presence filling the space like gravity. He was younger than the legend suggested, mid-30s maybe, but his eyes were ancient, black as midnight, sharp as broken glass, and completely devoid of warmth. His suit was tailored to perfection, charcoal gray with a crimson pocket square that looked like a drop of blood against his chest. Two men flanked him, silent and massive, their faces carved from stone. "Wine," Dominic said in Italian, his tone suggesting it wasn't a request. "The Barolo, 2010. Kaya nodded once, her face blank, and turned toward the bar. "Lenta, questa, come un fantasma che cammina tra I vivi." The words stopped her cold. He'd spoken in Sicilian, not the polished Italian of Rome or Florence, but the dialect of the old country, the one spoken in mountain villages and forgotten corners of the island. The language of her childhood, the language of her family. Slow, this one. Like a ghost walking among the living. He didn't think she understood. Why would he? To him, she was just another waitress, another invisible face in a city full of them. He was testing his men, making a joke at her expense in a language he assumed was safe. Kaya's pulse quickened. She had two choices: keep walking and remain invisible, or respond and shatter the mask she'd worn for 6 years. She made her choice. Kaya turned slowly, meeting Dominic's eyes for the first time. His gaze was a weapon, designed to strip people bare, to find weakness and exploit it. She didn't flinch. "I fantasmi si muovono lentamente perché sanno che nessuno li vede arrivare," she said quietly, her Sicilian flawless, her tone calm as still water. Ghosts move slowly because they know no one sees them coming. The restaurant didn't just go quiet this time. It stopped. The clink of glasses ceased. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the kitchen seemed to hold its breath. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, calculation, and something darker, dangerous. His men tensed, hands moving subtly toward concealed weapons. Sicilian, Dominic said softly, switching back to Italian, his voice like silk over steel. Not just Italian, Sicilian, the old dialect. Where did a waitress in New York learn that? Kaya's heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm. My grandmother, she lied smoothly. She was from Corleone. She raised me. It wasn't entirely false. Her grandmother had been from Corleone, but she'd been so much more than that. Dominic studied her for a long moment, his gaze peeling back layers, searching for the truth beneath the lie. Your grandmother taught you well, he said finally. What's your name? Kaya. Kaya. He tested the word like wine on his tongue. You have an unusual skill set for a waitress, Kaya. I have an unusual grandmother. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. The Barolo, he said, dismissing her with a flick of his hand. Kaya turned and walked toward the bar, her legs steady despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. She could feel his eyes on her back, dissecting her, cataloging her, filing her away as a curiosity or a threat. What the hell was that? Marco hissed as she reached the bar. His face was pale, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled the bottle of Barolo from the wine rack. Nothing, Kaya said calmly. He made a joke? I responded. That's not nothing. That's Dominic Varelli. Do you have any idea who he is? I know exactly who he is. And she did. Everyone in the city knew Dominic Varelli. He was the king of the underworld, the man who controlled everything from the docks to the Diamond District. His family had ruled New York's criminal empire for 3 generations, and Dominic had taken it further than his father or grandfather ever dreamed. He was ruthless, intelligent, and utterly untouchable. Crossing him was suicide. Drawing his attention was nearly as bad. Kaya had just done both. She carried the wine back to his table, uncorked the bottle with practiced ease, and poured a measure into his glass. Dominic lifted it, swirled it once, and took a slow sip. His eyes never left hers. Perfect, he said. Then in Sicilian again, but ghosts have a way of becoming problems when they're seen. Kaya met his gaze evenly. Only if they want to be seen, she replied. Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time she saw genuine interest flicker across his face. Go, he said quietly, before you become more interesting than you already are. Kaya turned and walked away, her pulse roaring in her ears. She made it 3 steps before the world exploded. The windows shattered inward in a spray of glass and rain. Gunfire erupted, sharp, deafening cracks that tore through the restaurant like thunder. Screams filled the air as patrons dove beneath tables. Kaya's instincts took over before her mind could catch up. She spun, saw the masked gunmen pouring through the broken windows, their weapons trained on Dominic's booth. His bodyguards were already moving, drawing their weapons, but they were too slow. One of the attackers had a clear shot at Dominic, who was rising from his seat, his hand reaching inside his jacket. Kaya didn't think. She moved. She launched herself across the space, slamming into Dominic's side just as the gunman fired. The bullet tore through the air where Dominic's head had been a second before, embedding itself in the leather booth with a muffled thunk. Kaya and Dominic hit the floor together, her body covering his as chaos erupted around them. Stay down, she hissed in his ear. Dominic's bodyguards opened fire, their shots precise and deadly. 2 of the attackers went down immediately, blood spraying across the white tablecloths. More gunmen poured in, and the restaurant became a war zone. Tables splintered under gunfire. The mirror behind the bar shattered. Somewhere, someone was screaming. Kaya's mind worked at lightning speed. She counted 6 attackers, maybe 7. Automatic weapons, organized. This wasn't a robbery. It was a hit, and they weren't here for her. Dominic shifted beneath her, and she felt the cold steel of a pistol press against her ribs. Move, he said, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. Kaya rolled off him, and Dominic came up firing. His first shot took down an attacker who'd been advancing on their position. His second shot shattered a chandelier, sending it crashing down onto 2 more gunmen. His movements were fluid, economical, lethal. This was a man who had lived his entire life in violence. Kitchen! Dominic barked at his men. Move! His bodyguards laid down covering fire as Dominic grabbed Kaya's wrist, not gently, and hauled her toward the back of the restaurant. She didn't resist. Whatever was happening, staying here meant dying. They burst through the kitchen doors into a world of steam and stainless steel. The cooks had already fled, leaving pots boiling over and flames licking at abandoned pans. Dominic's grip on her wrist was iron as he dragged her toward the back exit. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp as a knife. "No one," Kaya gasped. "Liars don't tackle crime lords to save their lives. Who are you?" Before Kaya could answer, the kitchen doors exploded inward. 3 more attackers stormed through, weapons raised. Dominic shoved Kaya behind him and fired twice, dropping one of them instantly. His bodyguards took down the other 2, but not before one of them got off a shot. The bullet caught Dominic's lead bodyguard in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Vaffanculo," the man snarled, clutching his arm. "Move," Dominic ordered. He kicked open the back door and pulled Kaya into the alley, rain immediately drenching them both. A black SUV screeched around the corner, its doors already open. "Get in," Dominic commanded, shoving Kaya toward the vehicle. "I'm not—" "Get in." The tone left no room for argument. Kaya climbed into the SUV, and Dominic followed, his bodyguards piling in after them. The driver floored it before the doors were even closed, tires screaming on the wet pavement. Kaya pressed herself against the far window, her heart hammering, her mind racing. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. 6 years. 6 years of being no one, and in one night everything had fallen apart. Dominic turned to her, rain dripping from his dark hair, his black eyes burning with intensity. "Start talking," he said quietly. "And don't lie to me again. Who taught you Sicilian? Who taught you to move like that? And why the hell did you just save my life?" Kaya's throat was dry. She could feel the weight of his gaze, the intelligence behind it, the danger. He wasn't going to let this go. He couldn't let this go. She had revealed too much, acted too quickly, and now she was trapped in a car with the most dangerous man in New York, being driven to God knew where. "My grandmother," she said again, but this time her voice wavered. "Bugiarda," Dominic said softly. "Liar. Your accent isn't from Corleone. It's from the east coast of Sicily, Messina, maybe. And the way you moved, that wasn't instinct. That was training. Military, private security." His eyes narrowed. "Or something else?" Kaya said nothing. There was nothing safe to say. Dominic leaned back, his gaze never leaving her face. "You just saved my life," he said. "That means you're either incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, or you have a reason to keep me alive. Which is it?" "I don't know," Kaya said, and for the first time in 6 years she told the complete truth. "I don't know why I did it." Dominic studied her for a long moment, then turned to the driver. "Take us to the estate, and call Angelo. Tell him we have a situation." "What kind of situation, boss?" the driver asked. Dominic's eyes were still locked on Kaya. "The kind that changes everything." The estate was a fortress disguised as a mansion. 20 acres of manicured grounds surrounded by 15-foot walls, cameras on every corner, and security teams that could rival a small army. Kaya had heard of it, of course. Everyone had. The Varelli compound was legendary, a symbol of power and untouchability. Being dragged through its gates as a prisoner, or whatever she was, felt surreal. The SUV pulled up to the main house, a sprawling structure of stone and glass that managed to look both elegant and impenetrable. Dominic's bodyguards flanked her as she climbed out, their hands resting on concealed weapons. They weren't taking chances. Neither was she. Kaya scanned her surroundings as they walked. Guard positions, camera angles, exit routes. Old habits. Dangerous habits. But she couldn't stop herself. Survival was in her blood. They entered through a side door into a marble-floored hallway lined with oil paintings and antique sculptures. It looked like a museum, not a home. Dominic led her through a series of hallways into a study lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive mahogany desk. "Sit," Dominic ordered, gesturing to a leather chair. Kaya sat, her hands folded in her lap, her posture calm despite the storm inside her. Dominic poured himself a glass of whiskey from a crystal decanter, then turned to face her. "You have one chance to tell me the truth," he said. 1. After that, I start asking questions in ways you won't enjoy. So let's try again. Who are you? Kaya met his gaze. Kaya Bellini. I'm a waitress. I've lived in New York for 6 years. Before that, I was no one. Where were you born? Sicily. Where in Sicily? Taormina. Dominic's eyes flickered. Taormina. Beautiful city. Lots of tourists. Lots of money. He took a sip of whiskey. Lots of families. Kaya's jaw tightened. He knew. Of course he knew. Taormina wasn't just a tourist destination. It was a stronghold, a place where the old families still held power. My family had nothing to do with that world, Kaya said carefully. And yet here you are, speaking a dialect most people your age have never heard, moving like a trained soldier and throwing yourself in front of bullets meant for me. Dominic set down his glass. Try again. Kaya's mind raced. She could lie, but he'd see through it. She could stay silent, but he'd break her. Or she could give him just enough truth to satisfy him without revealing everything. My family was part of that world, she said quietly, a long time ago. But they're gone now, all of them. I left Sicily 6 years ago, came to New York, and I've been invisible ever since. That's the truth. Who were they? It doesn't matter, they're dead. It matters to me. Why? Dominic leaned against his desk, his arms crossed. Because 6 different families want me dead, and I need to know if you're working for one of them. I'm not. Prove it. How? Tell me who your family was. Kaya's hands clenched in her lap. Saying the name would change everything. It would tear open wounds she'd spent 6 years trying to close. But staying silent might get her killed. Santoro, she said finally, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. The temperature in this room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, calculation, and something that might have been surprise. Santoro, he repeated softly. The Sicilian family that controlled the eastern ports. Yes. The family my father wiped out 15 years ago. Kaya's throat tightened, but she forced herself to nod. Yes. Dominic was silent for a long moment, his gaze boring into her. How old were you? 12. And you survived. I hid. When the shooting stopped, I ran. I stayed hidden for 6 years in Sicily, then I came here. I wanted to disappear. I did disappear. Until tonight. Until tonight. Dominic pushed off the desk and began to pace, his movements controlled and deliberate. So the daughter of the Santoro family, a family my father destroyed, just happened to be working in the restaurant I chose to visit tonight. And when assassins came for me, you just happened to save my life. Yes. You expect me to believe that's coincidence? I don't care what you believe, Kaya said, her voice sharper than she intended. I didn't plan this. I didn't know you'd be there. I've spent 6 years avoiding people like you, and tonight I made a mistake. I should have let them kill you. Dominic stopped pacing and turned to face her, his eyes blazing. But you didn't. No. Why not? If my family destroyed yours, why save me? Kaya didn't have an answer. She'd asked herself the same question 100 times in the car ride here. Instinct? Stupidity? Some buried sense of honor that refused to let an unarmed man die in front of her? I don't know, she admitted. Dominic studied her for a long moment, then made a decision. You're staying here. What? You're staying, under my protection. Those men tonight, they weren't random thugs. They were professionals, coordinated. Someone sent them, and they won't stop until I'm dead, which means anyone associated with me is now a target. He paused. Including you. I'm not associated with you. You are now. The moment you tackled me, you became part of this. They'll come for you to get to me, or they'll assume you know something and come for you anyway. Either way, you're dead if you leave. Kaya's pulse raced. I can take care of myself. Against 6 trained assassins? Against the kind of people who plan hits like the one tonight? Dominic shook his head. You're good. I saw that, but you're not that good. No one is. I don't want your protection. I don't care. Dominic's tone was final. You saved my life. That means you're my responsibility now. You'll stay here, you'll be safe, and when this is over, we'll talk about what happens next. And if I refuse? Dominic's smile was cold. Then you can walk out that door right now, but you won't make it 3 blocks before they find you. Your choice. Kaya wanted to argue, wanted to fight, but she knew he was right. The moment she'd revealed herself, the moment she'd acted, her invisibility had shattered. There was no going back. Fine, she said quietly. I'll stay. Good. Dominic walked to the door and opened it. Angelo! A man appeared almost instantly, mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, sharp suit, and eyes that missed nothing. Yes, boss? This is Kaya. She's a guest. Set her up in the East Wing. Guards on the hallway, cameras on the entrances. No one gets in or out without my approval. Angelo's gaze flicked to Kaya, assessing her in a single glance. Understood. And Angelo? She's not a prisoner. Treat her like a guest. Of course, boss. Kaya stood, her legs steadier than she'd expected. As she moved toward the door, Dominic's voice stopped her. Kaya. She turned. Thank you, he said quietly. For tonight, whatever your reasons, you saved my life. I don't forget debts like that. Kaya nodded once and followed Angelo out of the study. As she walked through the hallways of the fortress that was now her cage, one thought echoed in her mind. What have I done? The room Angelo led her to was larger than her entire apartment. A suite with vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the grounds, and furniture that probably cost more than she'd earned in 6 years. It was beautiful. It was luxurious. It was a prison. Angelo gestured to a wardrobe. Clothes have been provided. Anything you need, there's a phone on the nightstand. Dial 0 for the kitchen, 1 for security, 2 for Mr. Varelli directly. Thank you, Kaya said. Angelo studied her for a moment. You saved his life tonight, he said. That takes guts, or stupidity. I haven't decided which yet. Neither have I. Angelo's mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be, interesting. He left, closing the door behind him. Kaya heard the faint click of a lock engaging, and despite Dominic's assurances, she knew the truth. She was a prisoner, no matter how gilded the cage. She walked to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked grounds, the walls, the guards patrolling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were hunting Dominic, and now, whether she liked it or not, they were hunting her too. Kaya pressed her forehead against the cool glass and closed her eyes. For 6 years, she had been no one, invisible, safe. Now, in a single night, she had become the most dangerous thing she could be, seen. Hours later, 3:47 a.m., Kaya couldn't sleep. She'd tried, laid in the massive bed, stared at the ceiling, counted her breaths. But her mind wouldn't stop racing. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the restaurant, the gunman, Dominic's face when she said her family name, Santoro. She hadn't spoken that name aloud in 6 years, hadn't let herself think it, remember it, feel it. And now it was out in the open, hanging between her and the man whose family had destroyed hers. Kaya threw off the covers and paced the room. The clothes Angelo had provided fit perfectly. Black pants, a soft gray sweater, simple but expensive. Someone had taken her measurements. Someone had prepared for her. How long has he been watching me? The thought sent ice through her veins. Had tonight really been coincidence, or had Dominic known exactly where to find her? A soft knock on the door made her freeze. Miss Bellini? A woman's voice, accented, Eastern European maybe. Mr. Varelli requests your presence in his office. Kaya glanced at the clock. Nearly 4 a.m. Now? Yes, miss. Kaya opened the door to find a young woman in a dark suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, her expression neutral. Follow me, please. The walk through the mansion at night was different, quieter, darker, the shadows deeper. They passed guards at every hallway junction, men who watched her with professional detachment. The message was clear. She was protected, but she was also contained. The woman led her to a different office than before. Smaller, more personal. Bookshelves lined the walls, but these books were worn, read, loved. A desk sat by the window, papers scattered across it. And in a leather chair by the fireplace, Glass of whiskey in hand sat Dominic. He'd changed clothes, black pants, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. He looked less like a crime lord and more like a man who couldn't sleep, haunted by the same ghosts that plagued her. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Kaya sat, her guard up. Dominic took a sip of whiskey, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I've been thinking about tonight," he said. "About you. About what you said. And? And I think you're telling the truth, mostly." "Mostly? You're holding something back, I can see it. But I don't think you're here to kill me, and I don't think you're working for my enemies. Which leaves me with a question." "What question?" Dominic leaned forward, his gaze intense. "What do you want, Kaya Santoro?" The name hit her like a slap. She hadn't been called that in so long it felt like someone else's identity. "I told you," she said carefully, "I want to disappear." "That's what you wanted, past tense. But you can't disappear now, not after tonight. So what do you want now?" Kaya was quiet for a long moment. What did she want? Revenge? She'd tried that once, in Sicily, and it had nearly gotten her killed. Justice? There was no justice in this world, not for people like her. Safety? That was impossible now. "I want to survive," she said finally. "Good." Dominic set down his glass. "Because I'm going to make you an offer. And before you refuse, I want you to think very carefully about your alternatives." "What offer?" "Stay. Not as a prisoner, not as a guest. As part of my organization." Kaya's eyes widened. "You're joking." "I never joke about business. You have skills I need. Language, instinct, the ability to think on your feet. And whether you realize it or not, you've already proven yourself. You saved my life when you had every reason to let me die. That doesn't mean I want to work for you. No. But it means I can trust you in ways I can't trust most people. And right now, trust is more valuable than gold." Dominic stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "Someone tried to kill me tonight. That means there's a traitor in my organization, someone feeding information to my enemies. I need people I can trust, people who have no connections to my world, no loyalties to betray. You don't know me. I know enough. You're smart, you're trained, and you have a reason to hate the Varelli family, but you saved me anyway. That tells me you're honorable, practical. Exactly what I need." Kaya stood, anger flashing through her. "My family is dead because of yours. You expect me to work for you? To help you?" Dominic turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "My father destroyed your family 15 years ago. I was 21 years old, fresh out of Harvard, trying to build something legitimate. I didn't want the family business. I wanted out. But my father died 6 months later, and I inherited an empire I never asked for." He paused. "I know what my father did. I know the blood on my family's hands, but I'm not my father." "That doesn't change what happened." "No, it doesn't, but it might change what happens next." Dominic stepped closer, his voice quieter but no less intense. "You want revenge? I can't give you that. Your family is gone and killing me won't bring them back. But I can give you something else: power, resources, the ability to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else." "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm building something different. My father ruled through fear. I'm going to rule through loyalty, through respect. And that starts with making things right where I can." Kaya wanted to laugh, to scream, to tell him he was insane. But something in his voice stopped her. He believed what he was saying. Whether it was true or just another manipulation, she couldn't tell. But he believed it. "I need time to think," she said. "You have until morning. After that, I need an answer." Kaya turned toward the door. "One more thing," Dominic said. She stopped. "Those men tonight, the ones who tried to kill me, they weren't sent by a rival family. The tactics were too precise, the timing too perfect. Someone inside my organization gave them the information they needed." His eyes were hard as diamonds. "Which means until I find out who, no one is safe. Not my men, not my allies, and especially not you. So whatever you decide, don't leave this compound, because outside these walls, you're already dead." Kaya nodded and left the office, her mind spinning. As she walked back to her room, escorted by the silent blonde woman, one thought echoed through her head. He's right. I can't go back. There is no back anymore. The invisible girl was gone, and in her place stood someone who would have to choose: disappear forever, risking death at every turn, or step into the light and become someone powerful enough that no one would ever make her disappear again. By the time she reached her room, the sun was beginning to rise over the walls of the Virelli compound, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Kaya stood at the window and watched the new day break, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing would ever be the same. Kaya made her decision before the sun fully cleared the horizon. She found Dominic in the same office, still awake, still dressed in the clothes from the night before. He looked up when she entered, his expression unreadable, though something flickered in his dark eyes. Anticipation, maybe, or calculation. "I'll stay," she said without preamble, "but I have conditions." Dominic leaned back in his chair, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I'm listening." "I don't kill for you. I don't torture. I don't do anything that makes me like the people who destroyed my family." "Agreed. I want access to everything. Your files, your operations, your network. If I'm going to help you find the traitor, I need to see it all." Dominic's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's asking for a lot of trust." "You said you needed people you could trust. This is what that costs." For a long moment he studied her, and Kaya forced herself to hold his gaze. She couldn't show weakness now, not when everything hung in the balance. "Fine," Dominic said finally. "But understand this. If you betray me, if you use that access for anything other than finding the traitor, there won't be anywhere in the world you can hide. Are we clear?" "Crystal." Dominic stood and extended his hand. "Welcome to the Virelli family, Kaya Santoro." Kaya stared at his hand for a moment, then took it. His grip was firm, his skin warm, and the handshake felt like signing a contract in blood. "Don't call me Santoro," she said quietly. "That name died a long time ago. I'm Kaya Bellini now." "Then welcome, Kaya Bellini." Dominic released her hand. "Get some sleep. We start at noon. Angelo will brief you on the basics, how the organization works, who's who, what we're dealing with." "I don't need sleep." "Yes, you do. You're running on adrenaline and fear, and both will burn out soon. Rest. That's an order." Kaya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was already creeping in at the edges of her consciousness. The last 24 hours had been a lifetime compressed into minutes, and her body was beginning to rebel. "Fine," she said, "but noon, not a minute later." "Noon," Dominic agreed. Kaya turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. "Kaya?" She looked back. "You made the right choice." "We'll see," she said, and walked out. Back in her room, Kaya collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Sleep claimed her almost instantly, dragging her down into darkness where ghosts waited, her father's face, her mother's scream, the smell of smoke and blood that had followed her across an ocean and 6 years of running. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows and someone was knocking softly on the door. "Miss Bellini? It's 11:45. Kaya sat up, disoriented, her body stiff and aching. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it all came rushing back: the restaurant, the gunfire, Dominic's offer, her decision. "I'm awake," she called out. "Mr. Moretti is waiting for you in the South Conference Room. I've left clothes outside your door." Kaya found a garment bag hanging on the door handle. Inside was a tailored black pantsuit, a cream silk blouse, and leather boots that looked like they cost more than her monthly rent used to. Everything fit perfectly, which meant someone had been very thorough in their assessment of her. She dressed quickly, pulled her dark hair back into a sleek ponytail, and studied herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, polished, composed, dangerous. Not a waitress anymore. Not invisible. "Who are you now?" She didn't have an answer. The South Conference Room was a study in controlled power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate grounds, where men in dark suits patrolled with the precision of a military operation. A long mahogany table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by leather chairs. And at the head of that table sat Angelo Moretti, a stack of files in front of him and a laptop open at his side. "Miss Bellini," he said, gesturing to the chair beside him. "Please, sit." Kaya sat, her posture straight, her hands folded on the table. Angelo studied her for a moment, his gray eyes sharp and assessing. "Mr. Virelli tells me you're going to help us identify the traitor." That's the plan. Do you have any experience with this kind of work? No? Then let me be very clear about what you're walking into. Angelo opened the first file, revealing photographs of men in suits, some smiling at galas, others caught in surveillance photos, all of them looking powerful and dangerous. The Varelli organization is comprised of approximately 200 made members, another 500 associates, and countless civilians on the payroll. We control shipping, construction, waste management, several legitimate businesses, and interests in everything from real estate to entertainment. We are, by any measure, one of the most powerful criminal enterprises on the East Coast. I'm aware. Good. Then you'll also be aware that with that power comes enemies. 6 families would love to see Dominic dead. The Calabrese family in Boston, the Russos in Philadelphia, the DeLucas in Chicago, the Petrov-Bratva out of Brooklyn, the Yamaguchi Gumi operating out of Jersey, and most recently the Sands cartel pushing up from Miami. Any one of them could have orchestrated last night's attack. But you don't think they did, Kaya said. Angelo's eyebrow lifted slightly. Why would you say that? Because if an outside family had orchestrated it, you'd be hitting back already. You're not, which means you think it came from inside. Angelo's lips twitched in what might have been approval. Mr. Varelli chose well. Yes, we believe the attack was orchestrated internally. The timing was too precise. The attackers knew exactly when Dominic would be at that restaurant, exactly where he'd be sitting, and exactly how many guards would be with him. That information doesn't leave this organization. How many people knew he'd be there? 7, Dominic himself, myself, his driver Carlo, his 2 bodyguards Marco and Luca, his cousin Vincent, who manages security, and his sister Gianna, who handles legitimate business operations. And you trust all of them? I've worked with Dominic for 15 years. Marco and Luca have been with us for a decade. Carlo's been driving for the family since Dominic's father was alive. Vincent and Gianna are blood. Angelo paused. But trust is a luxury we can't afford right now. Someone talked. We need to find out who. Kaya leaned back in her chair, thinking. What about electronic surveillance? Could someone have tapped phones, hacked emails? We sweep for bugs weekly. Our communications are encrypted. It's possible, but unlikely. Then it's someone in that group of 7, or someone they told. That's what we believe. So where do I come in? Angelo closed the file and opened another. This one contained dossiers, detailed backgrounds on each of the 7 suspects. You come in as an outside observer, someone none of them know, someone who has no loyalty to any of them. You'll attend meetings, observe interactions, ask questions, and you'll report everything back to Dominic and me. You want me to spy on his inner circle. I want you to find the person who tried to kill him before they succeed. Angelo's voice was hard. Make no mistake, Miss Bellini. This isn't a game. Whoever is behind this won't stop with one attempt. They'll try again, and next time they might not fail. Every hour we don't identify the traitor is an hour Dominic is in danger. Kaya met his gaze. You care about him, as more than just a boss. Dominic saved my life 20 years ago when I was nothing but a street kid running numbers for his father. I would die for him. So yes, I care. Angelo's expression softened slightly. He's a good man, Miss Bellini. Better than this world deserves. Don't let his name or his reputation fool you. He's trying to build something different here. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand what's at stake, and because I need to know if I can trust you. Can you? Angelo studied her for a long moment. I don't know yet, but Dominic thinks so, and I've learned to trust his instincts. So I'm giving you a chance. Don't waste it. Before Kaya could respond, the door opened and Dominic walked in. He'd changed. Dark gray suit, black shirt, no tie. He looked every inch the crime lord, powerful and untouchable. Angelo, he said with a nod, then turned to Kaya. How's the briefing going? She's sharp, Angelo said. Ask the right questions. Good. Dominic pulled out a chair and sat down across from Kaya. Because we have a situation that requires sharp thinking. I received a message this morning from the Calabrese family. They want a meeting. Angelo stiffened. When? Tonight. Marco Calabrese himself, along with 2 of his lieutenants. Neutral ground, the Meridian Hotel downtown. It's a trap, Angelo said immediately. Maybe. Or maybe Marco wants to discuss terms. The Calabrese family has been quiet lately. Too quiet. This could be an opportunity to feel out where they stand. Or it could be a second attempt on your life, which is why I'm bringing insurance. Dominic looked at Kaya. You're coming with me. Kaya's pulse quickened. Why me? Because no one knows who you are. To the Calabrese family, you'll look like a new associate, someone unimportant, which makes you the perfect observer. You'll watch, listen, and tell me if anything feels wrong. I'm not a bodyguard. No, you're something better. You're someone with fresh eyes and good instincts. Last night proved that. Kaya wanted to argue, but she could see the logic. She was an unknown variable, someone the enemy wouldn't account for. And if she was going to help find the traitor, she needed to understand the players. What do I need to know about the Calabrese family? She asked. Angelo pulled out another file. Marco Calabrese is 58, old school, ruthless, but honorable in his own way. He's been running Boston for 30 years and has no love for the Varellis, but he's also pragmatic. If he sees an advantage in peace, he'll take it. And if he sees an advantage in war, then we'll all be dead by tomorrow, Angelo said flatly. Comforting. Dominic's mouth twitched. Welcome to my world, Kaya. Get ready. We leave at 7. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Angelo walked Kaya through protocols, where to stand, when to speak, what signals meant danger. She was fitted with a discreet earpiece that would let her communicate with Dominic's security team, given a detailed layout of the Meridian Hotel, and shown escape routes in case everything went wrong. You're not armed, Angelo said as they reviewed the plan. Marco's people will scan everyone at the door. If they find a weapon on you, the meeting's over and we lose credibility. So if things go bad, I'm defenseless. No, if things go bad, you run. That's your only job. Survive and report back what you saw. And Dominic? Dominic can take care of himself. Kaya wasn't so sure about that, but she kept her thoughts to herself. At 6:45, she met Dominic in the main foyer. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine, charcoal suit perfectly tailored, black overcoat draped over his shoulders, his dark hair combed back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. He looked powerful, dangerous, and absolutely in control. Ready? He asked. As I'll ever be. They rode to the hotel in silence, flanked by 2 armored SUVs carrying Dominic's security team. Kaya watched the city pass by outside the tinted windows, the glittering lights of Manhattan, the crowds of people living their normal lives, completely unaware of the wars being fought in the shadows. The Meridian Hotel was a monument to old New York money, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of understated elegance that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Dominic's team swept the lobby before they entered, checking exits and scanning for threats. 3rd floor, private dining room. Angelo's voice came through Kaya's earpiece. Marco's already there with his people. You're clear to proceed. Dominic offered Kaya his arm. Stay close, he said quietly, and trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, squeeze my arm twice. Kaya took his arm, and they walked into the hotel like they owned it. The private dining room was intimate, a single table set for 6, candles flickering in crystal holders, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 3 men were already seated, and they stood as Dominic entered. Marco Calabrese was exactly as Angelo had described. Late 50s, silver hair, expensive suit, and eyes that had seen too much death to be shocked by anything. His 2 lieutenants flanked him, younger men with hard faces and harder eyes. Dominic, Marco said, his voice carrying a thick Boston accent. Good of you to come. Marco, you said it was important. It is. Please sit. Dominic gestured for Kaya to take the chair beside him, and they sat in unison. Marco's eyes flicked to Kaya, assessing her in a single glance. Who's your friend? Marco asked. An associate, Dominic said smoothly. Kaya Bellini, she's new to the organization. Bellini, Marco tested the name. Italian? Sicilian, Kaya said, her voice calm. Marco smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Sicilian, just like Dominic's father. How fitting. Let's skip the pleasantries, Dominic said. You didn't call this meeting to discuss my staffing choices. What do you want, Marco? Marco leaned back in his chair, his expression turning serious. I want to talk about last night. Kaya felt Dominic tense beside her, though his face remained impassive. What about last night? Dominic asked. 6 men attacked a restaurant you were dining in. Professional hit squad. Well-armed, well-coordinated. You survived by luck and the quick thinking of someone who wasn't even supposed to be there. Marco's eyes flicked to Kaya again. Quite a coincidence. Get to the point. The point, Dominic, is that someone wants you dead. And when wars start in New York, everyone bleeds. I didn't come here to threaten you. I came to offer information. In exchange for what? In exchange for peace. The Calabrese family has no interest in seeing you dead. We have our territory, you have yours. But if someone's making moves against you, I need to know it's not going to spill over into my operations. Dominic was silent for a moment, studying Marco. You know who's behind it. I have suspicions. Share them. Marco glanced at his lieutenants, then back to Dominic. 2 weeks ago, one of my captains was approached by an intermediary, someone offering a substantial amount of money for information about your movements, your security protocols, your routines. Kaya's pulse quickened. And? Dominic's voice was dangerously quiet, and my captain refused, then reported it to me. I made inquiries, tried to trace the intermediary back to their source, but they covered their tracks well. All I know is they're well-funded, professional, and they're not working for any of the traditional families. Then who? That's what I'm trying to find out, because if it's not one of us, if it's someone new trying to move into New York, then we have a much bigger problem than one dead crime lord. Dominic leaned forward slightly. Why tell me this? Why not let them kill me and claim the territory? Marco's expression hardened. Because I'm old school, Dominic. I believe in rules, I believe in respect. Your father and I had our differences, but we understood each other. We maintained balance. If you die and chaos erupts, those rules die with you. I'm not interested in presiding over a war zone. How noble, Dominic said dryly. It's not nobility, it's survival. We're dinosaurs, you and I. The world is changing, and if we don't adapt, we'll go extinct. But I'd rather adapt with someone I can negotiate with than get torn apart by jackals who don't understand honor. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Kaya could feel the tension in the room, thick enough to cut. Finally, Dominic nodded. I appreciate the information, Marco, and the sentiment. If you discover anything else, I'd be interested to hear it. Same to you. And Dominic? Marco stood, his lieutenants rising with him. Watch your back. Whoever's behind this, they're playing a long game. Last night was just the opening move. They shook hands, a gesture that felt more like a temporary ceasefire than an alliance, and Marco left with his men. Kaya and Dominic sat in silence for several minutes after the door closed. Well, Dominic said finally. He was telling the truth, Kaya said. About the approach to his captain, at least. He's worried. I know. So, if it's not the Calabrese family, and it's not any of the other traditional players, who's behind this? That, Dominic said, standing and offering her his hand, is what we need to find out. And quickly. They left the hotel the same way they'd entered, smoothly, professionally, giving nothing away. But Kaya could feel the weight of Marco's words pressing down on them. Someone new, someone dangerous, someone playing a long game. Back at the estate, Dominic called an emergency meeting. His inner circle gathered in the main conference room. Angelo, Vincent the security chief, Gianna, his sister, and 3 captains who ran different divisions of the organization. Kaya stood in the corner, observing. Marco Calabrese gave us intel, Dominic said without preamble. Someone's been making inquiries about my movements. Professional, well-funded, and not affiliated with any known family. Could be lying, Vincent said. He was younger than Dominic, mid-30s, with the same dark eyes and sharp features. Family resemblance was unmistakable. Calabrese has wanted your territory for years. Marco's many things, but he's not a liar, Angelo said. If he says someone approached his people, I believe him. So what do we do? Gianna asked. She was elegant, mid-20s, with her brother's intelligence but a softer edge. Double security? Go to ground? We find out who's behind this and we end it, Dominic said flatly. But first, we need to close the leak in our organization. Someone gave the attackers my location last night. Until we find out who, no one is safe. You think it's one of us? Vincent's voice was sharp, almost offended. I think someone in this organization talked. Whether they meant to or not, they gave away information that nearly got me killed. Then we interrogate everyone who knew your location, one of the captains said. Start at the bottom, work our way up. And tip off the traitor that we're hunting them? Angelo shook his head. No, we need to be subtle. Watch, wait, and see who makes a mistake. While more attempts are made on Dominic's life, Gianna's voice was strained. That's not acceptable. Neither is starting a witch hunt that could tear this organization apart, Dominic said. Angelo's right. We watch, we wait, and we stay smart. The meeting continued for another hour. Strategies discussed and discarded, security measures debated. Kaya watched them all. The body language, the tensions, the alliances. Vincent was protective of his cousin, but resentful of Angelo's influence. Gianna was worried, but trying to hide it. The captains were loyal, but nervous, each one likely wondering if they were under suspicion. And through it all, Dominic remained calm, controlled, giving nothing away. When the meeting finally ended and the room emptied, Dominic turned to Kaya. What did you see? Kaya hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Vincent doesn't trust Angelo. Gianna's scared but trying not to show it. The captains are loyal, but they're also afraid. If you push too hard, you'll create paranoia. If you don't push hard enough, the traitor will have time to cover their tracks. So what would you do? I'd make the traitor think they've won. Let them believe they're safe, that you don't suspect anyone inside. Meanwhile, I'd watch financial records, communications, anything that might show unusual activity. People get careless when they think they're safe. Dominic studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good instincts. Get some rest. Tomorrow, you start digging. Kaya left the conference room and headed back to her suite, exhaustion finally catching up with her. But as she walked through the quiet hallways, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She turned a corner and nearly collided with Gianna. Sorry, Kaya said, stepping back. Gianna smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Kaya, right? The waitress who saved my brother's life. That's me. I wanted to thank you. Dominic is... Gianna paused, her composure slipping slightly. He's all I have left. Our father's gone. Our mother died when we were young. If something happened to him... I understand. Gianna's eyes searched Kaya's face. Do you? Because I'm not sure I understand you. You appear out of nowhere, saved Dominic's life, and now you're working for him? That's quite a career change from waitressing. There was suspicion in her voice, carefully controlled but unmistakable. Your brother made me an offer I couldn't refuse, Kaya said carefully. Or wouldn't refuse. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the timing is awfully convenient. Dominic gets attacked, you save him, and suddenly you're part of the organization. It's a great way to get close to someone you want to betray. Kaya's jaw tightened. If I wanted your brother dead, I would have let those bullets hit him. Maybe. Or maybe you're playing a longer game. They stared at each other for a long moment, tension crackling between them. Finally, Gianna stepped back. I hope you're what you appear to be, Kaya, for your sake. Because if you're not, if you hurt my brother in any way... She didn't finish the threat. She didn't need to. Gianna walked away, leaving Kaya alone in the hallway, her heart pounding. So much for trust. Back in her room, Kaya stood at the window and stared out at the darkened grounds. Somewhere out there, an enemy was planning their next move, and inside these walls, someone was waiting to betray Dominic. She was caught in the middle of a war she hadn't asked for, surrounded by people who didn't trust her, working for a man whose family had destroyed hers. And the worst part? She was starting to care whether he lived or died. That realization terrified her more than any bullet ever could. 3 days later, Kaya sat in Angelo's office surrounded by financial records, surveillance logs, and communication transcripts. Her eyes burned from staring at screens. Her back ached from hours hunched over documents. But she'd found something. Angelo, she called out, not looking up from the laptop. Come look at this. Angelo crossed the room and peered over her shoulder at the spreadsheet displayed on the screen. What am I looking at? Wire transfers. Small ones, 1,000 here, 1,500 there, all going to the same offshore account over the past 3 months. Total amount just over $40,000. Whose account are these coming from? That's the interesting part. Kaya pulled up another window. The transfers are being routed through 6 different shell corporations, but when you trace them back to their source, They all originate from the same place. The security division budget. Angelo's expression darkened. Vincent's department. It could be coincidence, maybe legitimate expenses that weren't properly documented. Or maybe Vincent's been selling information to the highest bidder. Angelo pulled out his phone. I need to tell Dominic. Wait, Kaya grabbed his wrist. We don't have proof. All we have are suspicious transfers. If you accuse Vincent without solid evidence, and he's innocent, you'll destroy the trust between him and Dominic. Family trust. And if he's guilty and we wait, Dominic could die. So we get proof, real proof, before we blow this open. Angelo studied her for a long moment, then slowly lowered his phone. What do you suggest? Vincent manages security for all of Dominic's public appearances, right? When's the next one? Tomorrow night, charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum. Black tie, 500 guests, mostly legitimate business owners and politicians. Dominic's giving a speech about his family's philanthropic foundation. Perfect. We tell Vincent the location and time, but we feed him false information about Dominic's route to the venue and his security detail. Then we watch. If someone shows up along the fake route, we know Vincent's the leak. Angelo's eyes narrowed in approval. You think like a strategist. I think like someone who survived by being 3 steps ahead of everyone else. Kaya closed the laptop. Can you set it up without making Vincent suspicious? I can try. But Kaya, if Vincent is the traitor, he's family. Dominic will have to make a choice no one should have to make. I know. That evening, Kaya found herself summoned to Dominic's private study. He was standing by the window when she entered, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his silhouette dark against the city lights beyond. Close the door, he said without turning. Kaya complied, her pulse quickening. Something in his tone put her on edge. Dominic turned to face her, and she saw exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, tension in the set of his shoulders. Angelo told me about the transfers, and your plan for tomorrow night. I thought we agreed to get proof before. He told me because I asked him directly if there had been any developments. Don't blame Angelo for doing his job. Dominic took a sip of whiskey. Do you really think it's Vincent? I think someone in your security division is moving money in ways they shouldn't be. Whether that's Vincent directly or someone under him, I don't know yet. Vincent and I grew up together. We're not just cousins. We're brothers in everything but blood. When my father died, Vincent stood beside me. When I rebuilt this organization, he was my right hand. I know. Do you? Because you're asking me to consider the possibility that one of the only people I trust completely has been trying to kill me. Kaya moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that someone you trust has betrayed you. That's not the same thing as assuming guilt. But if we don't investigate, if we ignore the evidence because it's uncomfortable, then the next attempt might succeed. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying her face. You're right. I hate it, but you're right. He set down his glass. Tomorrow night, we run your trap. But Kaya, if Vincent is innocent and this damages our relationship, the consequences fall on you. Understood. And if he's guilty, Dominic's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. Then I deal with him my way. Kaya nodded, though something in his tone sent ice through her veins. She'd seen what happened to traitors in this world. She'd lived through it. There's something else, Dominic said, changing the subject. Tomorrow's gala. You're coming with me. As my date. Kaya's eyes widened. What? The event is high profile. Politicians, business leaders, people who could be useful or dangerous. I need someone beside me who can read a room, who can watch for threats I might miss. That's you. I'm not exactly gala material. You will be. Dominic walked to his desk and pressed a button on the intercom. Send her in. The door opened and a woman entered, mid-40s, elegant, with sharp eyes that assessed Kaya in a single sweeping glance. This is her? Kaya, meet Sofia Marchesi. She's going to prepare you for tomorrow night. Sofia circled Kaya slowly, like a sculptor examining a block of marble. Good bone structure, decent posture, but that hair needs work and those clothes are unacceptable. How much time do I have? 24 hours, Dominic said. Barely adequate, but I'll manage. Sofia grabbed Kaya's hand. Come with me, dear. We have work to do. Before Kaya could protest, she was being pulled from the study and down a hallway to a suite she'd never seen before. The room was filled with racks of clothing, shelves of shoes, and enough jewelry to stock a boutique. "Strip," Sophia commanded. "Excuse me?" "Your measurements. I need to know what we're working with. Don't be shy. I've dressed everyone from senators' wives to movie stars. You're not showing me anything I haven't seen before." Kaya reluctantly complied, and for the next hour, she was measured, photographed, and critiqued. Sophia worked with ruthless efficiency, pulling dresses from racks, holding them up to Kaya's frame, discarding most with a dismissive shake of her head. Too ingenue, too matronly, too obvious. Finally, Sophia pulled out a gown in deep emerald green. Try this. The dress was stunning. Sleeveless with a high neckline, it hugged Kaya's body before flowing into a subtle train. The fabric caught the light like water, elegant and understated, but impossible to ignore. Kaya stared at her reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at her was a stranger, powerful, sophisticated, dangerous in a completely different way than she'd been as a waitress. "Now you look like someone who belongs beside Dominic Varelli," Sophia said with satisfaction. "Tomorrow, we'll do your hair and makeup. By the time I'm finished, no one will remember the invisible girl. They'll only see the queen." That word, queen, sent an unexpected shiver through Kaya. Not of fear, but of something else. Recognition, maybe, or possibility. The next evening, Kaya descended the main staircase of the estate in the emerald gown, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, her makeup subtle but striking. At the bottom of the stairs, Dominic waited in a midnight blue tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a film about dangerous men and the women foolish enough to love them. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her, and for just a moment the mask of control slipped. "You look like someone who belongs beside you?" Kaya finished, echoing Sophia's words. "Like someone who could rule this city if she wanted to." Dominic offered his arm. "Ready? As I'll ever be." They rode to the museum in Dominic's personal car, a sleek black Mercedes with bulletproof glass and armor plating hidden beneath elegant lines. Angelo sat in the front passenger seat, his eyes constantly scanning the streets. The fake route they'd fed Vincent had them approaching from the east and using a specific back entrance. The real route took them from the south, directly to the main steps. "Radio check," Angelo said into his mic. "All teams report." A series of confirmations came through from the security details positioned around the museum. Everything was in place. "If Vincent's the leak, they'll be waiting on the east side," Kaya said quietly. "And if he's not, we've just wasted resources on paranoia," Angelo replied. They pulled up to the museum's grand entrance, where photographers and reporters were gathered behind velvet ropes. Camera flashes exploded as Dominic stepped out and offered his hand to Kaya. She took it, emerging from the car with a grace that surprised her. "Mr. Varelli, who's your date?" "Mr. Varelli, is it true you're expanding into international shipping?" Miss, what's your name?" Dominic ignored the questions, his hand warm and steady on the small of Kaya's back as he guided her up the steps and into the museum. The moment they crossed the threshold, they entered a different world, one of crystal champagne flutes, designer gowns, and the kind of wealth that never had to announce itself. "Stay close," Dominic murmured in her ear. "These people are more dangerous than any street thug. They smile while they stab you in the back." "Sounds familiar," Kaya replied, and felt rather than saw his slight smile. They moved through the crowd, Dominic's presence commanding attention without demanding it. People gravitated toward him, politicians wanting favors, businessmen seeking partnerships, society wives hoping for invitations. And through it all, Kaya watched and listened, cataloging names and faces, noting the subtle power dynamics at play. "Dominic Varelli, I was hoping I'd see you here." They turned to find a man in his 60s approaching, silver hair, expensive tuxedo, and eyes that calculated the value of everything they saw. Kaya recognized him from Angelo's briefings. Senator Richard Hastings, 3-term politician with a reputation for selling his influence to the highest bidder. "Senator," Dominic said smoothly, "still pretending to represent the people?" Hastings laughed, unbothered by the jab. "And you're still pretending to be a legitimate businessman. We all have our roles to play. Who's your lovely companion?" "Kaya Bellini," Dominic said, "a valued associate." "Bellini? Italian?" Sicilian, Kaya said, her voice cool. Even better. My great-grandmother was from Naples. Perhaps we're practically cousins. Hastings' smile was predatory. Tell me, Miss Bellini, how does someone become a valued associate of Dominic Virelli? It's not a position many people survive long enough to enjoy. By being useful, Kaya replied, and by knowing when to speak and when to listen. Excuse me, gentlemen, I need some air. She walked away before Dominic could respond, heading toward the terrace that overlooked the museum's sculpture garden. Behind her, she heard Hastings chuckle. Sharp tongue on that one. Careful she doesn't cut you with it, Dominic. Outside, the spring air was cool against Kaya's skin. She gripped the stone balustrade and took a deep breath, steadying herself. The performance was exhausting, playing the role of Dominic's companion, maintaining the facade, watching every word and gesture. Running away already? Kaya turned to find Gianna stepping onto the terrace, a champagne flute in her hand, her ice blue gown making her look like a winter princess. Just needed a moment, Kaya said. I don't blame you. These events are insufferable. All these people pretending to care about art and charity when really they're just here to make deals and gather blackmail material. Gianna moved to stand beside Kaya. You're good at this, though, playing the part, almost like you've done it before. I haven't. Really? Because you carry yourself like someone who grew up in this world. The posture, the way you speak, the way you handle men like Senator Hastings. Gianna's eyes were sharp. Where did a waitress learn those skills? Kaya met her gaze evenly. I had a good teacher. My grandmother believed in proper deportment even if we had nothing. Your grandmother, the one from Corleone who taught you Sicilian. That's right. Interesting. Because I asked around about you, Kaya Bellini, and you know what I found? Nothing, no records before 6 years ago. No employment history, no education transcripts, no paper trail at all. It's like you didn't exist until you appeared in New York. Kaya's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice calm. Some of us prefer to live quietly. Or some of us are running from something. Gianna stepped closer, her voice dropping. I don't know what your game is, but I'm watching you. If you hurt my brother, if this is some elaborate setup, I will destroy you, slowly, painfully. Do we understand each other? Perfectly. They stared at each other for a long moment, two women circling like predators, each trying to determine if the other was threat or ally. Miss Virelli? A security guard appeared at the terrace door. Your brother is about to give his speech. Gianna's expression smoothed instantly, the society mask sliding back into place. Thank you. She looked at Kaya once more. Shall we? They returned to the main hall where a crowd had gathered around a small stage. Dominic stood at the podium, looking every inch the philanthropist rather than the crime lord. When he spoke, his voice carried authority and warmth in equal measure. Thank you all for coming tonight. The Virelli Foundation was established by my father 25 years ago with a simple mission, to give back to the city that made our family's success possible. Tonight, I'm pleased to announce a new initiative, a $50 million investment in education programs for underprivileged youth in New York. Applause filled the room. Kaya watched the crowd, noting who clapped enthusiastically and who merely went through the motions. But her attention was pulled away by a voice in her earpiece. Angelo, to all units, we have movement on the east perimeter. Multiple vehicles, armed personnel. They're setting up positions along the false route. Kaya's breath caught. The trap had worked. Someone had fed the fake information to an attack team. Do not engage, Angelo's voice continued. Observe and identify only. I repeat, do not engage. Kaya's eyes found Angelo across the room. He was speaking quietly into his phone, his expression grim. Then his gaze shifted to someone in the crowd, and Kaya followed it. Vincent was standing near the back of the room, his phone in his hand, his face pale and drawn. As Kaya watched, he typed something quickly, then pocketed the phone and slipped out of the hall. Without thinking, Kaya followed. She moved through the crowd smoothly, her gown swishing against marble floors as she pursued Vincent through the museum's galleries. He was walking quickly, but not running, not drawing attention. He turned down a corridor marked Private Staff Only and disappeared through a door. Kaya hesitated for only a moment before following. The door led to a service stairwell, and she could hear Vincent's footsteps echoing as he descended. She slipped off her heels, gathered her gown in one hand, and moved silently down the stairs after him. 2 flights down, Vincent exited into what appeared to be a storage area, crates of artifacts, maintenance equipment, dim lighting. Kaya cracked the door open just enough to see him pull out his phone and make a call. "It's me," Vincent said, his voice tight. "We have a problem. They didn't use the east route. It was a setup. Someone knows." He listened, his face growing darker. "I don't care what you have to do. Get your people out of there and abort the mission. This whole thing is compromised." He ended the call and stood there for a moment. His shoulders slumped. Then he slammed his fist against a crate, the sound echoing through the space. "Damn it!" Vincent's voice cracked. "Damn it, Dominic. Why couldn't you just die quietly?" Kaya's heart was racing. She needed to get back, needed to tell Dominic, but before she could move, a hand clamped over her mouth, and she was yanked backward. "Don't scream," a voice whispered in her ear. "Don't move. I'm trying to save your life." Kaya's training took over. She drove her elbow back into her attacker's ribs, twisted out of their grip, and spun to face Gianna. "What are you doing?" Kaya hissed. "Stopping you from getting yourself killed." Gianna grabbed Kaya's arm and pulled her back up the stairs. "Vincent's not alone down there. His security team sweeps these areas during events. If they'd found you listening, you'd be dead before anyone knew you were missing." "He's the traitor. I heard him on the phone. I know, I've suspected for weeks." Gianna's voice was tight with emotion. "But we can't confront him here, not like this. We need to get Dominic and do this properly." They emerged back into the museum proper, both breathing hard. Gianna smoothed her dress, composed herself, then turned to Kaya. "Go to my brother. Tell him everything you heard. I'll make sure Vincent doesn't leave the building." "Why are you helping me?" Gianna's eyes were hard as diamonds. "Because despite my suspicions about you, I know my brother trusts you, and right now you're more loyal to him than his own blood." She paused. "Also because you were right. The timing was suspicious, but you could have let those bullets hit him, and you didn't. That means something." Before Kaya could respond, Gianna walked away, her elegant gown swishing as she disappeared into the crowd. Kaya found Dominic still working the room, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. She touched his elbow, and he immediately sensed something was wrong. He excused himself smoothly and led her to an alcove. "What happened?" Kaya told him everything. The surveillance report from Angelo, Vincent's phone call, the confirmation of betrayal. With each word, Dominic's expression grew colder, harder, until he looked like a statue carved from ice. "Where is he now?" Dominic's voice was deadly quiet. "Gianna is keeping him from leaving, but Dominic, get Angelo. Tell him to lock down the building. No one leaves until I say so." "What are you going to do?" Dominic's eyes met hers, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. "What I should have done the moment I suspected betrayal. I'm going to end this." 20 minutes later, the museum was locked down. Security teams sealed exits, guests were told there was a security concern and asked to remain calm, and Vincent Varelli was escorted to a private gallery that had been cleared of civilians. Kaya stood beside Angelo in the shadows as Dominic walked into the room where his cousin waited. Vincent was seated in a chair, 2 guards flanking him, his face a mask of defiance and resignation. "Take off the cuffs," Dominic ordered. "Boss, I don't think—" one of the guards started. "Take them off." The guards complied, stepping back. Vincent rubbed his wrists, his eyes never leaving Dominic's face. "You knew," Vincent said finally. "The whole time you knew." "I suspected. Then I tested. Then Kaya confirmed it." Dominic's voice was conversational, almost friendly, which somehow made it more terrifying. "How long, Vincent? How long have you been selling me out?" 6 months, since the Calabrese family first approached me." "Marco Calabrese?" "His son, Anthony. He offered me money, protection for my family, a way out of this life." Vincent laughed bitterly. "I was tired, Dom. Tired of the violence, the paranoia, the constant looking over my shoulder. I wanted what you never could give me, a normal life. So you decided to kill me instead. I didn't want you dead. I just wanted you gone. Out of power, retired, anything but this." Vincent gestured at the museum, at the guards, at the world they'd built. But you wouldn't step down. You kept pushing, kept expanding, kept making enemies. So yes, eventually I agreed to help them remove you. But I never pulled a trigger, Dom. I never gave the direct order. You just gave them the information, the locations, the timing, the security details. Dominic's voice dropped to a whisper. You just made it possible for someone else to pull the trigger. Yes. The admission hung in the air between them. Kaya saw the moment something broke in Dominic's eyes, the last thread of hope that maybe, somehow, this could be explained away. That maybe Vincent was being blackmailed or coerced. But no. Vincent had chosen this. Why? Dominic's voice cracked on the word. We're family. We're brothers. Because you're not my brother anymore, Dom. You haven't been since you took over the family. You became something else, something I don't recognize, and I can't follow you into whatever darkness you're heading toward. Dominic was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Angelo. The attack team on the east perimeter, what happened to them? Picked up by NYPD when they tried to flee. Anonymous tip. Angelo's voice was flat. They'll talk eventually. Give up their employer. Anthony Calabrese. That would be my guess. Dominic nodded slowly, then looked back at Vincent. You have one chance. Tell me everything. Every conversation, every meeting, every piece of information you passed along. Give me enough to destroy the Calabrese operation completely. Do that, and I'll let you disappear. You'll be dead to this family, but you'll be alive. Vincent's eyes widened. You're letting me live? I'm giving you a choice. Betray your co-conspirators and save yourself, or stay loyal to them and die with them. And if I talk, you'll really let me go. You have my word. But Vincent, if you ever come back to New York, if you ever contact anyone in this organization, if you even think about crossing me again, I will find you. And what I do to you will make you wish I'd killed you tonight. Vincent's hands were shaking. I'll tell you everything. Good. Angelo, take him somewhere secure. Get everything on record. When he's done, give him money and a car, and get him the hell out of my city. As the guards escorted Vincent out, he stopped at the doorway and looked back at Dominic. For what it's worth, Dom. I'm sorry. I really am. So am I, Dominic said quietly. Because despite everything, I loved you like a brother. And now I have to live with the fact that I failed you somehow. That I became something that made you want me dead. You didn't fail me. You just became exactly what this world needed you to be. I'm just too weak to be part of that world anymore. Vincent left, and the room fell silent. Dominic stood completely still, his back to Kaya and Angelo, his shoulders rigid with control. Boss? Angelo said softly. Give me a minute. Angelo nodded to Kaya, and they slipped out of the gallery, leaving Dominic alone with his grief. Outside, the museum was slowly returning to normal. Guests were being allowed to leave, security was standing down, and the event was being spun as a false alarm. But Kaya knew the truth. Tonight, Dominic Varelli had lost family and gained an enemy. He'll be all right, Angelo said, though he didn't sound convinced. He's survived worse. Has he? Kaya asked. Losing family to betrayal? His father betrayed him every day by forcing him into this life. His mother abandoned him by dying. Vincent's just one more name on a long list of people who've let him down. Angelo's voice was tired. But you helped him tonight. You found the truth when the rest of us were too close to see it. I'm not sure he'll thank me for it. Maybe not tonight, but eventually he'll realize you saved his life again, just in a different way. Kaya wasn't sure about that, but she didn't argue. Instead, she asked the question that had been nagging at her since Vincent's confession. What happens now? To the Calabrese family? Angelo's smile was cold. Now? Now we go to war. An hour later, after the museum had emptied and the night had grown quiet, Kaya found Dominic on the museum's rooftop. He'd shed his jacket and bow tie, his white shirt open at the collar, his dark hair disheveled from running his hands through it. He stood at the edge, looking out over the glittering city that was his kingdom. You should be inside, he said without turning. It's cold up here. So should you. Kaya moved to stand beside him, the emerald gown offering no protection against the wind. Angelo told me about the war. Did he tell you what it means? The violence, the bloodshed, The innocent people who will get caught in the crossfire? He didn't have to. I've seen it before. Dominic finally looked at her, his eyes haunted. In Sicily? When your family was destroyed? Yes. Then you know what I'm about to unleash, and you know there's no going back once it starts. Kaya was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I know that sometimes violence is the only language certain people understand. And I know that if you don't strike back, you'll look weak. And in your world, weakness is death. It doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it necessary. Dominic turned to face her fully, and she saw the weight he carried, the burden of power, the cost of survival, the loneliness of command. Thank you, he said quietly, for finding the truth, for being loyal when my own blood wasn't. I'm not loyal to you, Kaya said, and his eyebrows rose in surprise. I'm loyal to the truth, to doing what's right. And right now, keeping you alive is what's right. Why? Because you need my protection? Because despite everything your family did to mine, despite the fact that I should hate you, I don't think you're evil. I think you're trying to build something better in a world that fights you at every turn. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth protecting. Dominic stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then slowly, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle against her skin. You're unlike anyone I've ever met, Kaya Bellini. Brave and dangerous and completely impossible to predict. I can't decide if you're my greatest asset or my greatest threat. Maybe I'm both. Maybe. His hand lingered against her cheek, his thumb brushing her jawline. But either way, I'm glad you're here. Kaya's breath caught. The moment stretched between them, electric and dangerous, full of possibilities neither of them could afford to explore. Then Dominic stepped back, breaking the spell. Come on, let's get you inside before you freeze. They walked back through the museum together, neither speaking, both aware that something fundamental had shifted between them. They'd crossed a line tonight, from reluctant allies to something more. Something neither of them had words for yet. But wars have a way of forcing clarity. And the war that was coming would test everything they'd built, everything they believed, and everything they were becoming to each other. As they left the museum and climbed into the waiting car, Kaya looked back at the building one last time. Tonight, she'd attended her first gala as Dominic Virelli's companion. She'd helped expose a traitor. She'd been threatened by his sister and thanked by the man himself. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the invisible girl who'd spent 6 years running had finally stopped. Not because she'd found safety, but because she'd found something worth standing and fighting for. The war came faster than anyone expected. 2 days after Vincent's confession, the Calabrese family's operations in New York began to crumble. Their shipping warehouses burned in coordinated strikes. Their money laundering fronts were raided by federal agents acting on anonymous tips. Their street soldiers found themselves arrested on outstanding warrants that had mysteriously surfaced overnight. Dominic had unleashed hell, and he'd done it with surgical precision. Kaya watched it unfold from the war room Angelo had set up in the estate's basement, a space lined with screens showing surveillance feeds, maps marked with territory lines, and communication equipment that would make a military command center jealous. She sat beside Angelo as he coordinated strikes, listening to him bark orders into phones and watching the chess pieces move across the board. 3 more of Anthony Calabrese's lieutenants just surrendered to NYPD, one of Angelo's analysts reported. They're asking for protective custody. Smart men, Angelo muttered. They know what's coming. What is coming? Kaya asked. Angelo looked at her, his expression grim. Dominic gave the Calabrese family 48 hours to hand over Anthony and everyone involved in the attempted hit. That deadline expires in 6 hours. If they don't comply, we move to phase 2. Which is? You don't want to know. But Kaya did know, because she'd seen it before. Phase 2 meant open warfare. Bullets in the streets, bodies in the harbor, civilians caught in the crossfire. It meant the kind of violence that made headlines and destroyed neighborhoods. There has to be another way, she said. There isn't. Not anymore. The moment Vincent betrayed us, the moment the Calabrese family tried to kill Dominic, this became inevitable. In our world, you either respond with overwhelming force or you look weak. And weakness gets you killed. Kaya stood and left the war room, unable to watch anymore. She found herself wandering the estate's grounds, past security checkpoints and guard rotations, until she reached the garden at the property's edge. It was early morning, the sun just beginning to paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, and for a moment she could almost pretend she was somewhere peaceful. Couldn't sleep either. She turned to find Gianna sitting on a stone bench beneath an old oak tree, a coffee cup in her hands, her expression weary. "Too much on my mind," Kaya admitted. "Join the club." Gianna gestured to the space beside her. "Sit. I promise not to interrogate you this time." Kaya sat, maintaining a careful distance. They'd reached a fragile truce after the gala, but trust was still a distant prospect. "I keep thinking about Vincent," Gianna said quietly. "About how we didn't see it. Or maybe we did, and we just didn't want to believe it. People are good at hiding what they don't want others to see." "Is that what you're doing? Hiding?" Kaya looked at her sharply, but Gianna's expression wasn't accusatory, just curious, and maybe a little sad. "I've spent 6 years hiding," Kaya said carefully. "It becomes a habit. And now? Now that you're visible, now that you're part of this world whether you wanted to be or not, what are you?" "I don't know yet." Gianna took a sip of coffee, her eyes on the sunrise. "My brother likes you. More than he should, probably. I can see it in the way he looks at you, the way he listens when you speak. It terrifies me." "Why?" "Because everyone Dominic has ever cared about has either betrayed him, died, or both. Our mother died when he was 12. Our father forced him into this life and died before Dominic could escape it. Vincent just proved that even family can't be trusted. And now here you are, this mysterious woman with no past, who appeared at exactly the right moment to save his life. It's too convenient, too perfect. You think I'm playing him. I think I don't know what to think about you, and that scares me more than if you were an obvious threat." Gianna turned to face her. "So I'm asking you directly, one woman to another. What do you want from my brother?" Kaya considered the question. What did she want? Revenge? She'd had opportunities to hurt Dominic and hadn't taken them. Safety? She was safer here than she'd been in years. Freedom? That was something she'd given up the moment she'd tackled him in that restaurant. "I want him to survive," Kaya said finally. "I want this war to end without him dying. Beyond that, I honestly don't know." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." They sat in silence for a moment, the morning air cool against their skin. Then Gianna spoke again, her voice softer. "He's going to get himself killed, you know. This war with the Calabrese family. It's going to escalate and Dominic won't back down. He can't. It's not in his nature. So if you actually care about him surviving, you need to help me find a way to end this before it destroys everything." "How? The deadline is in 6 hours. Anthony Calabrese isn't going to surrender himself, and Marco isn't going to hand over his own son." "Then we need to give them a reason to." Gianna stood, her mind clearly working. "Come with me. I have an idea, but I need your help." Kaya followed Gianna back into the house, through corridors and upstairs to a private office Kaya hadn't seen before. The room was elegant but functional, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk covered in financial documents. "This is where I manage the legitimate side of our operations," Gianna explained, pulling files from a drawer. "Real estate holdings, investment portfolios, shell corporations that actually do legal business. It's boring work, but it's necessary, and it's given me access to something valuable, leverage." She spread documents across the desk, and Kaya leaned in to read. They were property deeds, bank statements, incorporation papers, and they all had one thing in common. They connected the Calabrese family's legitimate businesses to illegal activities. Marco Calabrese has spent 30 years building a wall between his criminal empire and his legitimate holdings, Gianna explained. He's been careful, smart, covered his tracks. But his son Anthony? Anthony's been sloppy. He's been using legitimate businesses to launder money, and he's left a paper trail. I've been collecting evidence for months, just in case we ever needed it. "You've been planning for this," Kaya said, impressed. "I've been planning for the day someone tried to destroy us. I just didn't think it would be family." Gianna's voice hardened. "But here we are. If we take this evidence to the FBI, we can destroy the Calabrese family's legitimate empire. Everything Marco's built over 30 years, gone. His grandchildren's trust funds, his wife's real estate holdings, his political connections, all of it implicated in federal crimes. But if you do that, you start a war with the feds too. They'll investigate the Varellis next. Not if we give them what they want, the Calabrese family on a silver platter. We position ourselves as cooperating witnesses, maybe even victims of their aggression. Dominic's foundation does real charitable work. We have legitimate businesses that actually follow the law. We can survive federal scrutiny if we're careful. The Calabrese family can't. Kaya studied the documents, her mind racing. You'd burn down Marco's entire legacy to save Dominic. In a heartbeat. Marco made a choice when he authorized his son's attempt on my brother's life. Now he lives with the consequences. Gianna met Kaya's eyes. But I need your help. Dominic won't agree to this plan. He'll see it as weakness, as hiding behind law enforcement instead of handling it ourselves. He needs to hear it from someone he trusts, someone whose judgment he values. He barely knows me, but he trusts you in ways he doesn't trust anyone else. I've seen it. He listens when you speak. He considers your opinion. So I need you to convince him that this is the right move, that ending this without more bloodshed isn't weakness, it's strategy. Kaya looked at the evidence spread across the desk, then back at Gianna. The woman was right. Dominic would resist this plan. He'd want to handle the Calabrese family his way, with violence and overwhelming force. But Gianna's way was smarter, cleaner, and less likely to result in innocent casualties. I'll try, Kaya said, but I can't promise he'll listen. He'll listen. The question is whether he'll agree. They found Dominic in his study, surrounded by maps and reports, looking like a general preparing for battle. Angelo was with him, along with 3 of his top captains. They were discussing Phase 2, targets, timing, casualties. We hit their remaining warehouses simultaneously, one captain was saying. Burn everything, salt the earth. Send a message that, Dominic, Kaya's voice cut through the planning. We need to talk, privately. Every man in the room turned to stare at her. Angelo's eyebrows rose. The captains looked affronted that someone would interrupt their war council. But Dominic simply nodded. Everyone out! Give us the room! They filed out, Angelo shooting Kaya a curious look as he passed. When the door closed, leaving only Kaya, Dominic, and Gianna, the tension in the room was palpable. This better be important, Dominic said. We're 4 hours from the deadline. It is. Kaya gestured for Gianna to spread the documents across Dominic's desk. Your sister has found a way to end this war without starting a bloodbath in the streets. Dominic listened as Gianna explained her plan, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes moving from the documents to his sister to Kaya. You want me to hide behind the FBI, he said finally, to let law enforcement fight my battles for me. I want you to be smart, Gianna countered. Marco Calabrese tried to have you killed. Fine. We could respond with violence, burn his operations to the ground, maybe kill him and his son in the process. But then what? His family retaliates. Our allies choose sides. Before long, every family in the Northeast is at war, and the body count includes civilians who had nothing to do with this. That's the cost of doing business in our world. It doesn't have to be, not anymore. You're always talking about building something different, something better than what our father left us. Well, this is how you do it. You use strategy instead of bullets. You destroy your enemies without firing a shot. You prove that you're smarter than the old guard, not just more brutal. Dominic's jaw tightened. And when word gets out that I use the feds to take down a rival family? When other organizations see that I'm willing to cooperate with law enforcement? I'll look weak. Worse, I'll look like a snitch. You'll look like someone who won, Kaya said quietly. Like someone who outmaneuvered a family that tried to kill him. And you won't have civilian blood on your hands when it's over. Dominic's eyes locked onto hers. Since when do you care about civilian casualties? You've been advocating for finding the traitor, for protecting the organization. Now you're worried about collateral damage. I'm worried about you becoming the kind of man who doesn't care about collateral damage. Because once you cross that line, once you accept that innocent people dying is just the cost of doing business, you become exactly what your enemies say you are. You become your father. The words hit like a physical blow. Dominic's expression darkened, his hands clenching into fists. For a moment, Kaya thought she'd pushed too far, that he'd explode or throw them both out. But instead, he took a deep breath and turned to the window. My father would have burned the Calabrese family to the ground and slept soundly that night, Dominic said quietly. He wouldn't have hesitated, wouldn't have considered alternatives. Someone crossed him. They died. Simple. And where did that get him? Gianna asked. Dead at 52 with more enemies than friends and a legacy built on fear instead of respect. At least it was a legacy. At least people remembered his name. They'll remember yours too, Kaya said, moving to stand beside him. But for different reasons. For being the man who changed the rules, who proved you could be powerful without being a monster. Dominic looked at her, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted blood and vengeance fighting against the part that wanted to be better, to build something that would outlast him. If I do this, he said slowly, if I use Gianna's evidence and let the FBI handle the Calabrese family, I need insurance. I need to know that Marco understands exactly why this is happening, that it's not the Fed stumbling onto evidence, it's me delivering justice. We can arrange that, Gianna said. A message delivered through intermediaries, clear enough that Marco knows, subtle enough that it can't be traced back to us. And when this is over, when the Calabrese family is destroyed and Anthony's in federal prison, everyone needs to know who won. Not the FBI, not luck, me, the Varelli family. We get credit for the victory. Agreed. Dominic was quiet for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Do it. Make the call to your FBI contacts. Get the evidence into the right hands. But Gianna, he looked at his sister with an intensity that made her straighten. If this backfires, if the feds turn on us or if Marco retaliates in ways we didn't anticipate, that's on you. Are you prepared to live with that? Yes. Then make it happen. Gianna gathered the documents and left quickly, leaving Kaya alone with Dominic. He stood at the window, his shoulders tense, his reflection in the glass looking older and more tired than his actual face. You think I made the right choice, Dominic said. It wasn't a question. I think you made the smart choice. Whether it's right, we'll find out. And if it's not, if this destroys us, then at least you'll know you tried to be better than what this world expected you to be. Dominic turned to face her, and the expression in his eyes was complicated. Gratitude mixed with frustration, trust mixed with fear. You have a way of seeing through my defenses, Kaya Bellini, of finding the parts of me I try to keep hidden and dragging them into the light. Is that a bad thing? I don't know yet, but it's dangerous. For both of us. Before Kaya could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her blood ran cold. It was a message from an unknown number, and it contained just 3 words and an address. Come alone. Now! Attached was a photo that made her stomach drop, the ruins of her family's estate in Sicily, the place where everything had ended 15 years ago, the place she'd spent 6 years trying to forget. What is it? Dominic asked, reading the change in her expression. Kaya showed him the phone. His eyes narrowed as he read the message, then darkened with recognition when he saw the photo. That's the Santoro estate, he said quietly. The one my father destroyed. Someone knows who I am. Someone knows my real identity. Who else knows? You, Angelo, Vincent. That's it. Vincent? Dominic's voice turned to ice. He must have told someone before we caught him. The Calabrese family, maybe, or someone else. Either way, they're using your past as leverage. To get to you. Or to get to you directly. That message said, come alone. They want you isolated, vulnerable. It's a trap. Obviously, but what choice do I have? If they know who I am, they can expose me, destroy the life I've built here, use my connection to you against both of us. Dominic grabbed her shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. You're not going alone. I don't care what the message says. We go together with full security and we end whoever sent this. If I don't follow their instructions, they might what? Kill you? They're planning that anyway. At least if we go together, you have a chance. His voice softened slightly. I'm not losing anyone else, Kaya. Not to betrayal, not to enemies, not to the past. You're under my protection now, and that means something. Kaya wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could handle this alone the way she'd handled everything for 6 years. But the truth was, she was tired of being alone. tired of fighting every battle by herself. And something in Dominic's eyes told her he needed this, needed to protect someone, to save someone, after failing to save his cousin from betrayal. Together then, she said. But we do this smart. Small team, quiet approach. We don't know what we're walking into. Agreed. Angelo, Dominic called out, and his lieutenant appeared almost instantly. We have a situation. Within 30 minutes, they were ready. Dominic, Kaya, Angelo, and 4 of their best security personnel, all armed and wearing bulletproof vests under civilian clothing. The address in the message was an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn, the kind of place where bodies were found and questions weren't asked. They took 2 vehicles, approaching from different directions, communication equipment allowing them to coordinate. As they neared the warehouse, Angelo's voice came through the earpiece. Thermal imaging shows 3 heat signatures inside the main building. No vehicles in the immediate vicinity, but that doesn't mean they're not hidden nearby. This feels wrong, boss. Everything about this feels wrong, Dominic agreed. But we're committed. Kaya and I go in through the front. You and the team cover the exits and watch for ambush. Boss, I really think... That's an order, Angelo. They pulled up to the warehouse, the building looming against the afternoon sky like a tombstone. Kaya's heart was racing, but her hands were steady as she checked the weapon Dominic had insisted she carry, a compact Glock that felt foreign but reassuring in her grip. Whatever happens in there, Dominic said as they walked toward the entrance, whatever they say or show you, remember, the past is dead. You're Kaya Bellini now, not a Santoro. You're with me, and that means you're protected. You can't protect me from the truth. Watch me. They entered the warehouse together, weapons drawn, moving through shadows and dusty light filtering through broken windows. The space was vast and empty, filled with rusted machinery and abandoned shipping containers. And in the center of it all, lit by a single overhead light, stood 3 people. Kaya's breath stopped. She recognized the man in the center immediately, even though she hadn't seen him in 15 years. Uncle Pietro, her father's brother, the one who'd been away when the Varelli family attacked, the one she'd thought died years ago. Hello, Kaya, Pietro said in Sicilian, his voice exactly as she remembered, rough as gravel, warm as summer wine. You've grown into a beautiful woman. Your father would be proud. Pietro. Kaya's voice was barely a whisper. You're alive. More than alive. I've been building, planning, waiting for the right moment. And now that moment has arrived. His eyes shifted to Dominic, and his expression hardened. Dominic Varelli, the son of the man who murdered my family. How fitting that you'd bring my niece into your world, make her complicit in your sins. She's not complicit in anything, Dominic said, his weapon trained on Pietro. And you're not taking her anywhere. Taking her? I'm not here to take her. I'm here to offer her a choice. Pietro stepped closer, and Kaya saw the 2 people flanking him more clearly now, both armed, both watching Dominic with the focus of trained killers. Kaya, for 15 years I've been in exile, building power, making alliances. The Calabrese family, the Petrov Bratva, organizations from Sicily to Shanghai, all of them united by one goal, destroying the Varelli Empire. You, Dominic's voice was cold with realization. You're the one who orchestrated the hit at the restaurant, not just Anthony Calabrese. Anthony is a useful idiot, easily manipulated with promises of power. But yes, I planned it. I've planned all of it. Vincent's betrayal, the attacks, everything. Because I wanted to draw out the last Santoro to see if my niece had survived. And she did. More than survived. She saved your life, Dominic. Ironic, isn't it? Kaya felt like the ground was tilting beneath her. You used me. You knew I was in New York all along. I've known where you were since the day you arrived 6 years ago. I've been watching, waiting, making sure you were safe. And when the time was right, I set events in motion that would force you out of hiding, force you to reveal yourself. Because I need you, Kaya. For what? To reclaim what's rightfully ours. The Santoro name, our legacy, our power. With you at my side, with the alliances I've built and the resources at my disposal, we can destroy the Varellis completely. We can rebuild our family empire and make it stronger than it ever was. All you have to do is choose correctly. Pietro extended his hand toward her, his expression intense. Come with me. Help me avenge your father, your mother, everyone we lost. or stay with the son of our enemy and be destroyed alongside him when my armies tear his world apart. Kaya stood frozen between them, Pietro on one side, representing her past, her blood, her family's memory. Dominic on the other, representing a future she hadn't known she wanted until it was offered. "She's not going anywhere with you," Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. "That's not your choice to make, it's hers." Pietro's eyes locked onto Kaya's. "What will it be, niece? Loyalty to blood, or loyalty to the family that destroyed yours?" Kaya's mind was racing. Pietro had orchestrated everything, the attack, Vincent's betrayal, probably even her assignment at Rossini's the night Dominic came in. He'd been moving pieces on a chessboard for months, maybe years, and she'd been one of those pieces without knowing it. But something didn't add up. "If you wanted revenge on the Varellis, why didn't you kill Dominic yourself years ago?" Kaya asked. "Why this elaborate plan? Why involve me at all?" Pietro's expression flickered with something, pride maybe, or satisfaction that she'd asked the right question. "Because killing Dominic isn't enough. I want him to lose everything first. His organization, his power, his family, his allies. And then, when he has nothing left, when he's broken and desperate, I want him to know that the last Santoro was the one who destroyed him, that we won, that our family's legacy triumphed over his father's sins." "You're insane," Dominic said. "I'm patient. There's a difference." Pietro's hand was still extended toward Kaya. "Decide now, niece, because in 60 seconds, my people surround this building and kill everyone inside who isn't you. Choose your family or choose your enemy. But choose." Kaya looked at Pietro's hand, then at Dominic's face. She saw the tension in his jaw, the barely controlled fury in his eyes, but also something else. Trust. He trusted her to make the right choice, even if that choice meant leaving him. That trust was worth more than all the blood ties in the world. "I have chosen," Kaya said quietly. She raised her weapon and aimed it squarely at Pietro's chest. "I choose truth over vengeance. I choose building something new over destroying something old. And I choose Dominic Varelli over the ghost of a family that died 15 years ago." Pietro's expression crumbled into rage. "You betray your own blood? You betrayed it first when you used me as a pawn without my consent. When you orchestrated violence that would have killed innocent people just to satisfy your need for revenge. My father believed in honor, in justice, in protecting the weak. You believe in nothing but hate. You're not my family anymore. Then you die with him." Pietro's hand moved toward his weapon, but Kaya was faster. She fired once, the shot echoing through the warehouse, and Pietro stumbled backward, blood blooming across his shoulder. His guards raised their weapons, but Angelo and Dominic's team burst through the doors, surrounding them. "Drop your weapons!" Angelo shouted. "Now!" Pietro's guards hesitated, then slowly lowered their guns. They were professionals enough to know when they were outmatched. Pietro clutched his wounded shoulder, his face twisted with pain and fury. "This isn't over, Kaya. My alliances are built on nothing but your promises of revenge," Dominic interrupted, moving to stand beside Kaya. "And now that everyone knows the last Santoro has sided with me, those alliances will crumble. You have nothing, Pietro. No leverage, no family, no power. You're just a bitter old man living in the past." Angelo's men secured Pietro and his guards, while Kaya stood there, her weapon still raised, her hands finally beginning to shake with the enormity of what she'd done. She'd chosen. Not revenge, not blood, not the past. She'd chosen something else entirely. Dominic gently lowered her weapon, then pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her tightly. "You're safe," he murmured. "I've got you." And for the first time in 15 years, Kaya believed it. The aftermath came in waves. Pietro was taken into federal custody within hours, his shoulder patched by a doctor who asked no questions before Angelo's team handed him over to the FBI. The evidence Gianna had compiled on the Calabrese family, combined with Pietro's confession about orchestrating the attacks, created a domino effect that shattered criminal alliances across the Northeast. By the time the sun rose the next morning, 3 major operations had collapsed. 7 high-ranking members of various organizations were in custody, and the power structure that had stood for decades was fundamentally broken. Kaya watched it all unfold from Dominic's study, exhausted but unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Pietro's face, The uncle she'd thought was dead, the man who'd used her as a weapon without her knowledge. The betrayal cut deeper than she'd expected, not because she'd loved him, but because she'd spent 15 years believing she was alone in the world. And now she knew she'd never truly been alone, just manipulated from a distance. "You should rest," Dominic said, entering the study with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one, his fingers brushing hers in a way that felt deliberate. "I can't. My mind won't stop." "I know the feeling." He sat beside her on the leather couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Angelo just called. The FBI is offering Pietro a deal, full cooperation in exchange for witness protection. They want him to testify against everyone he's been working with." "Will he take it?" "Probably. He's a survivor, not a martyr. And now that you've rejected him, he has nothing left to fight for." Dominic's voice softened. "How are you doing with all of this?" Kaya took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth ground her. "I don't know. Part of me feels relieved that it's over. Part of me feels guilty for shooting him, even though I know I had to. And part of me just feels empty. Like the last connection to my past is gone. And I don't know who I am without it." "You're Kaya Bellini, the woman who saved my life twice, the woman who helped me find a traitor and prevented a war, the woman who chose to build something new instead of destroying something old." Dominic turned to face her fully. "Your past doesn't define you anymore. You define you." "That's terrifying." "I know, but it's also freedom." They sat in silence for a moment, the city beginning to wake beyond the windows. Then Dominic spoke again, his voice careful. "Pietro said something in that warehouse. He said he'd been watching you for 6 years, making sure you were safe. Do you think that's true?" Kaya had been wondering the same thing. "Maybe. There were times when I felt like I was being followed, but nothing ever came of it. I thought I was being paranoid. Now I realize he probably had people keeping tabs on me, making sure I stayed alive for whatever plan he was building. That means he kept you safe from other threats too, from anyone who might have discovered who you really were and used it against you." "I suppose I should thank him for that," Kaya said bitterly. "No. You should thank yourself for surviving despite him, despite all of it." Dominic set down his coffee cup and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. "Kaya, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting, because if you do, I'll lose my nerve." Kaya's heart began to race, but she nodded. "When you walked into my life 3 weeks ago, I thought you were just another server in a restaurant I'd never visit again. Then you spoke Sicilian and saved my life. And suddenly, you were this mystery I needed to solve. Someone who didn't make sense, who didn't fit any pattern I understood. I told myself it was just strategy, keeping you close because you were useful, because you could help me find the traitor." He paused, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "But that was a lie. The truth is, from the moment you answered me in that dialect, from the moment you looked at me without fear in your eyes, I was drawn to you. And with every day that passed, every conversation we had, every risk you took to help me, that pull became stronger. Until I realized I wasn't just protecting you because you were useful. I was protecting you because losing you would destroy me." Kaya's breath caught. "Dominic, let me finish. I know this is complicated. I know my family destroyed yours, and that's a debt I can never repay. I know you have every reason to hate me, to walk away and never look back. But I'm asking you not to. I'm asking you to stay. Not as an employee, not as someone under my protection, but as someone who matters to me. As someone I want beside me when I rebuild this organization into something better. You're asking me to be part of your life. I'm asking you to be the center of it." The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Kaya looked into Dominic's eyes and saw vulnerability there. Real, unguarded vulnerability from a man who'd spent his entire life building walls to protect himself. "I'm broken, Dominic," she said quietly. "I have nightmares about Sicily, about the night your father's men came. I wake up screaming sometimes, reaching for weapons that aren't there. I don't know if I can ever fully trust anyone, or if I can build a normal life, or if I'm even capable of. I don't want normal. I want real. And you're the most real person I've ever met." Dominic's other hand came up to cup her face. "We're both broken, Kaya. Both haunted by our father's sins and the choices we've had to make to survive. But maybe 2 broken people can build something whole together. something neither of us could build alone. Kaya felt tears sting her eyes, tears she'd been holding back for 15 years, for 6 years of running, for 3 weeks of chaos and revelation. I'm scared. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe with anyone else. Kaya leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative, it was fierce and desperate and full of everything she couldn't put into words. Dominic responded immediately, pulling her closer, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pressed against the small of her back. The kiss tasted like coffee and possibility, like surrender and claiming all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kaya rested her forehead against his. "I'll stay," she whispered. "Not because you asked, because I choose to. Because for the first time in 15 years, I'm choosing something for myself instead of just surviving." That's all I needed to hear. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, while the sun climbed higher and the city awakened to a world that had fundamentally changed overnight. 2 weeks later, the transformation was complete. The FBI's investigation into the Calabrese family had resulted in 17 indictments, including Marco Calabrese himself. Anthony Calabrese was arrested attempting to flee to Canada and faced federal charges that would put him away for decades. The Petrov Bratva, seeing the writing on the wall, withdrew from New York entirely, ceding territory without a fight. And the other families who'd been part of Pietro's alliance quietly backed away, unwilling to risk the kind of scrutiny that had destroyed the Calabrese operation. Dominic Varelli emerged from the chaos not just intact, but stronger. The narrative that spread through the underworld was carefully crafted. He'd been attacked by traitors and enemies, and he'd responded not with mindless violence, but with surgical precision. He'd outmaneuvered opponents who should have destroyed him, and he'd done it without starting a war that would have consumed the entire city. Respect, the kind that couldn't be bought or forced, began to flow his way. But the real changes were happening behind the scenes. Dominic began restructuring the organization, pushing more resources into legitimate businesses, reducing the violent criminal activities his father had built the empire on. It was slow work, and it would take years to fully transition, but the direction was clear. The Varelli family was evolving, and Kaya was part of it all. She'd taken on an official role, Director of Strategic Operations, which was a fancy title for someone who helped Dominic think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She sat in on meetings with captains and lieutenants, offered perspective on deals and alliances, and used the skills she'd learned surviving alone to help an entire organization survive together. Some of the old guard resented her. They whispered that she was an outsider, that she had too much influence over Dominic, that a woman, especially a Santoro, had no place in their world. But those whispers died quickly when Angelo made it clear that Kaya had Dominic's full support. And more importantly, when her strategies started producing results that even the skeptics couldn't ignore. Gianna had warmed to her too. The two women had formed an unlikely alliance, bonding over their shared desire to protect Dominic and transform the organization. They worked together on the legitimate business side, with Gianna handling finance and Kaya managing security and intelligence. It wasn't friendship yet. Too much suspicion remained. But it was something approaching trust. 3 weeks after Pietro's arrest, Kaya stood in the estate's garden, looking out at the city she'd once hidden in and now helped protect. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine from the flowering vines that climbed the garden walls. "Beautiful night," Dominic said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of wine. "It is." Kaya accepted the glass, their fingers touching in a way that still sent electricity through her. In the weeks since their kiss, they'd grown closer, but they'd also been careful, taking things slowly, learning each other without the pressure of immediate danger forcing decisions. "I have something for you," Dominic said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. Kaya's eyes widened. "Dominic, if that's what I think it is, it's not a ring. Relax." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his face. "Open it." Inside the box was a key, old, ornate, clearly valuable. "What is this?" "It's the key to a property I've been holding on to. A brownstone in the West Village, fully renovated, completely secure. It's yours, if you want it. A place that's entirely your own, not part of the estate, not part of the organization, Somewhere you can go when you need space, when you need to remember you're more than just part of my world. Kaya stared at the key, emotion tightening her throat. You're giving me an escape route. I'm giving you a choice. Always. Because that's what you never had before. With your family, with Pietro, even with me at first. You were forced into situations, manipulated, trapped. I never want you to feel that way again. So this is my promise. You can stay, you can leave, you can come and go as you please. And I'll be here regardless because I choose you, not because I need you, but because I want you. Kaya set down her wine glass and pulled Dominic into a kiss that was softer than their first, deeper, full of gratitude and affection, and something that might eventually become love. I'm not going anywhere, she said when they broke apart, but thank you for understanding that I need to know I could. Always. They stood together in the garden, the city lights twinkling below, and for the first time in either of their lives, the future felt like possibility instead of threat. But peace, Kaya had learned, was always temporary in their world. It came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 month after Pietro's arrest. Kaya was in her new office, a space Dominic had created for her in the estate's East Wing, outfitted with computers, secure communications, and all the tools she needed to do her job. She was reviewing security protocols when Angelo burst in without knocking, his face pale. We have a problem. Kaya was on her feet instantly. What happened? Pietro escaped federal custody 3 hours ago, killed 2 marshals, injured a third, and disappeared. The FBI just notified us. Ice flooded Kaya's veins. How is that possible? He was in maximum security. Someone on the inside helped him. The FBI's investigating, but it doesn't matter. He's out, he's armed, and based on the message he left behind, he's coming for you. What message? Angelo handed her his phone. On the screen was a photo. The burned ruins of the Santoro estate in Sicily, the same image Pietro had sent to lure her to the warehouse. But this time, there were words scrawled across it in Sicilian. Family is forever. Betrayal is death. See you soon, niece. Where's Dominic? Kaya asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Meeting with the captains. I'm pulling him out now. We're going into full lockdown. The estate, all our properties, everything. Pietro won't get within a mile of you. But Kaya knew better. Pietro had spent 15 years planning, building resources, making connections. If he wanted to reach her, a locked estate wouldn't stop him. Nothing would. No, she said suddenly. No lockdown. Kaya, that's insane. He's coming for you. I know. And if we hide, if we go defensive, he'll just wait. He'll bide his time, strike when we least expect it, and people will die. Dominic, you, Gianna, anyone he can use to hurt me. I won't let that happen. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we end this, once and for all, on my terms, not his. Angelo studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'll get Dominic, but he's not going to like this. He was right. When Dominic heard Kaya's plan, he exploded. Absolutely not. You're not using yourself as bait. I won't allow it. You don't get to allow or not allow anything, Kaya said calmly. They were in the war room, surrounded by maps and monitors, with Angelo, Gianna, and 3 captains listening. This is my decision. Pietro wants me, so I give him a chance to take me. But on ground I choose, with backup I trust, and with a plan that ends him permanently. It's too dangerous. Everything we do is dangerous. But this way, we control the variables. We choose the location, the timing, the resources. Pietro has to react to us instead of us reacting to him. Gianna spoke up. She's right, Dominic. We can't spend the rest of our lives waiting for Pietro to strike. Better to force his hand now while we're ready than to let him choose the moment. And if something goes wrong, if he kills her, then you make sure my death means something, Kaya said quietly. You finish what we started, transforming this organization, building something better. You don't let my death turn you back into the man you were before. Promise me that. Dominic's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. I can't lose you. You won't. Because I don't plan on dying. I plan on ending this threat so we can actually have a future together. But I need you to trust me, the way I've trusted you. The room fell silent. Finally, Dominic nodded once, sharply. Fine. We do it your way. But I'm there, every step. And if anything goes wrong, If you're in danger for even a second, the plan changes. Understood? Understood. They spent the next 6 hours planning. Kaya would send a message to Pietro through channels he'd be monitoring. A challenge, delivered in Sicilian, offering to meet him at a neutral location. The place she chose was significant. The old Santoro warehouse in Red Hook, the one that had been part of her family's shipping operation before the Varellis destroyed it. It was abandoned now, forgotten, perfect for what she had in mind. The message was simple. You want family reunion? Let's have one. Tomorrow night, come alone, and I'll do the same. We settle this the old way, just you and me. Pietro's response came within an hour. Finally, you show some Santoro spine. Tomorrow night. Don't disappoint me, niece. The trap was set. The next evening, as the sun began to set over New York, Kaya stood in the ruins of her family's warehouse wearing clothes that allowed for movement, dark pants, a fitted jacket, boots with good traction. She was armed with the Glock Dominic had given her, plus a knife strapped to her ankle. And though the message had said, come alone, she knew Dominic and his team were positioned throughout the building, watching, waiting, ready to intervene. She wasn't alone. She would never be alone again. Pietro arrived precisely at sunset, walking through the warehouse's broken doors like a king entering his throne room. His shoulder was healed, his movements confident. He was armed. She could see the gun at his hip, but he made no move to draw it. Kaya, he said warmly, as if they were meeting for coffee instead of a confrontation that would end in death. You actually came. You didn't give me much choice. There's always a choice. You could have hidden behind Varelli's walls, let his men protect you, but you didn't. You came here, to our family's ground, to face me yourself. That takes courage. Your father's courage. Don't talk about my father. You don't have the right. Pietro's expression hardened. I have every right. I'm the one who's kept his memory alive, who's worked for 15 years to avenge what was done to our family. While you've been hiding, pretending to be someone else, I've been building an army, fighting for justice. You've been building a vendetta. There's a difference. Is there? The Varellis destroyed everything we were, everything we could have been. They killed your parents, your siblings, everyone you loved, and you're defending them? I'm defending the truth. Yes, Dominic's father did terrible things, but Dominic isn't his father. He's trying to be better, to build something that doesn't require blood and violence to sustain it. That's worth protecting. He's seduced you, made you forget who you are. No, he's helped me remember who I want to be. There's a difference. Pietro's hand moved toward his weapon. Then I'll help you remember properly, by showing you what happens to Santoros who betray their blood. He drew his gun, but Kaya was faster. Her shot caught him in the hand, sending his weapon skittering across the floor. Pietro roared in pain and fury, charging at her with the kind of speed that only desperation could fuel. Kaya sidestepped, using his momentum against him, but Pietro was experienced. He grabbed her arm, twisting it painfully, forcing her gun to the ground. They grappled, two people fighting with everything they had. Kaya, with her training and desperation. Pietro, with decades of experience and rage. You could have been great, Pietro hissed as they struggled. You could have been a queen ruling alongside me. Instead, you chose to be a whore for the Varellis. Kaya drove her knee into his injured shoulder and Pietro's grip loosened. She broke free, grabbed the knife from her ankle, and slashed at him. The blade caught his chest, not deep enough to kill, but enough to make him stumble back. That's when Dominic appeared from the shadows, his own weapon drawn, pointed directly at Pietro's head. It's over, Dominic said quietly. Surrender, and I'll let the FBI take you back. Fight, and I end you here. Pietro laughed, blood staining his shirt. You think you've won? This isn't over. My allies don't exist anymore. We dismantled them all while you were in custody. The Bratva, the Calabrese remnants, your contacts in Sicily, all gone. You're alone, Pietro. You have nothing left. Pietro's eyes darted between Kaya and Dominic, and for the first time she saw fear there. Real, genuine fear, because Dominic was right. Pietro had gambled everything on this confrontation, and he'd lost. Kaya, Pietro said, his voice breaking. Please, I'm family. Your blood. Doesn't that mean anything? It means I'll give you a choice, Kaya said, moving to stand beside Dominic. Surrender peacefully, and we let the law handle you. Or keep fighting, and we end this permanently. Choose. Pietro looked at them both, the niece who'd rejected him and the enemy who'd defeated him, and slowly, painfully, he raised his hands in surrender. I choose to live, he said bitterly. But know this, Kaya, you've destroyed the last piece of your family. When I'm gone, there's nothing left of the Santoros, nothing but you and the shame of what you've become. Wrong, Kaya said quietly. When you're gone, there's me and the future I'm going to build. A future that honors what my family should have been, not what they became. A future where the Santoro name means something more than revenge and violence. Angelo and his team moved in, securing Pietro and calling for federal transport. As they led him away, Pietro looked back one last time. You'll regret this, he called out. When you're alone again, when Varelli disappoints you or betrays you, you'll remember you had family and you threw it away. I remember perfectly, Kaya replied. I'm just choosing better family this time. They watched as Pietro was taken away, sirens echoing in the distance. When the warehouse fell silent again, Kaya turned to Dominic and found him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. You could have killed him. You had the chance, the justification, but you didn't. No, because if I'd killed him, I would have become exactly what he wanted me to be, someone defined by revenge, by violence, by the past. I won't let him win that way. Dominic pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. You're remarkable. You know that? I'm just trying to be better than what I came from. You already are. They stood like that in the ruins of her family's legacy, two broken people who'd found something whole in each other. And when they finally left the warehouse, walking out into the New York night together, Kaya didn't look back. The past was finally, truly over. 6 months later, the transformation was undeniable. The Varelli organization had shifted dramatically. The violent criminal enterprises had been scaled back, replaced by legitimate businesses that actually contributed to the community. Dominic had used Pietro's defeat and the collapse of the rival families to consolidate power, yes, but also to reshape what that power meant. The estate had changed too. It was still secure, still protected, but it felt less like a fortress and more like a home. Kaya had helped with that, insisting on changes that made the space more welcoming. Gardens expanded, security visible but not oppressive, rooms that felt lived in rather than staged. And Kaya herself had changed most of all. She'd moved into the brownstone Dominic had given her, but she spent most nights at the estate, in his room, in his bed, in his life. They'd fallen into a rhythm that felt natural, mornings spent strategizing, afternoons in meetings, evenings together, planning and dreaming and building. It wasn't perfect. Kaya still had nightmares sometimes, and Dominic still carried the weight of his father's sins. But they were healing, together, in ways neither of them could have managed alone. On a crisp autumn evening, Kaya stood on the rooftop of the estate. The same rooftop where Dominic had stood after Vincent's betrayal, looking out at his kingdom. But tonight, she wasn't alone. Dominic stood beside her, his arm around her waist, watching the sun set over Manhattan. I've been thinking, Dominic said. Dangerous habit. He smiled. I've been thinking about what we're building, this organization, this life. And I realized something. I don't want to build it as Dominic Varelli, crime lord. I want to build it as Dominic Varelli, businessman and philanthropist, someone my children could be proud of someday. Kaya's heart skipped. Children? Hypothetically, theoretically, possibly. He turned to face her, his expression serious but warm. Kaya, I know we said we'd take things slow. And we have, but I also know what I want. I want a life with you. A real life, not just survival. I want to wake up next to you every morning and know that we're building something that matters. Something that outlasts us. Dominic, let me finish. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. But I'm asking you to imagine it. To imagine a future where we're partners in everything, business, life, family, where the Varelli name means something good, and the Santoro name is reborn as something better than it was. Where two families that should have destroyed each other instead created something beautiful. Kaya felt tears in her eyes. Good tears for once. You're asking me to believe in happy endings. I'm asking you to believe in new beginnings, which is harder, I know, but also more real. Kaya reached up and cupped his face in her hands. I believe in you. I believe in us. And yes, I can imagine that future. I want that future. Yeah? Yeah. Dominic kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. And when they broke apart, he pulled a small box from his pocket. I said I wasn't asking you to marry me yet, he said with a slight smile, but I also believe in being prepared. Inside the box was a ring, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, the green stone the exact shade of the dress she'd worn to the gala, where everything had changed. It's a promise, Dominic said. Not a proposal. Not yet, but a promise that when the time is right, when we're both ready, I'm going to ask. And I'm hoping you'll say yes. Kaya looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the future stretching out before them. A future she'd never imagined when she was hiding in restaurants, serving tables, trying to be invisible. When you ask, she said, the answer is yes. Dominic slipped the ring onto her right hand, the promise hand, not the wedding hand, and pulled her close. They stood on the rooftop as the city lights began to twinkle below, two people who'd survived impossible odds to find each other. The invisible girl and the wolf, the heir and the king. Two broken pieces that had somehow formed something whole. And in the distance, the city that had witnessed their war, their alliance, their transformation, continued to pulse with life. A city that didn't care about the past, only about what came next. Kaya Bellini, once Santoro, always a survivor, finally something more, looked at that future and smiled. She was home. Not in a place, but in a person. In a choice. In a life she'd built from ashes and determination and the courage to believe that endings could become beginnings. The past was dead. Long live the future. And in that future, the wolf and the heir didn't stand as enemies. They stood as partners, as equals, as two people who'd rewritten every rule they'd been given and created something entirely their own. Something worth fighting for. Something worth living for. Something that looked remarkably like love.